Hello, fellow amnesiacs. This is Mike Simon coming to you from Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where I'm traveling this week for work. So, want to record my response to the module this week. So, the question was, what do I know and what do I want to know? In the first chapter on institutional history, I really liked the section headings, respect the old guy. Especially what he's referring to there, of course, is the early work in institutional history has value in terms of how institutions come to be and the personalities that shape them. And it was just good to hear an acknowledgement that early work, although clearly flawed and certainly open to improvements by subsequent researchers, has value and continues to have value today. Let there be life, to breathe life into the players who have long since left the stage, so to speak, and have integrity and accuracy with those still playing. We talk a lot about speaking truth to power, and I can imagine that someone who is writing institutional history has to think about how that's going to be interpreted by the people who are currently leading that institution and have a lot of authority and power and want to be represented in a good way. Walk the ground, get to the campus. I think that's true. Whenever I travel around the country, I always make a point of stopping at the campuses that are in the area where I'm visiting. And just getting a sense of how it feels on campus, what the energy is like, how the buildings are laid out, just always is intriguing to me. And so, I always make a point of going and usually grab a coffee on campus and maybe stop by the bookstore and buy a t-shirt. So that advice made a lot of sense to me. And then I think every author said in some form or another, get to know the staff at the archives, take them to lunch. They are your friends, and that made a lot of sense to me. It's certainly wise advice. So, in the second chapter about oral history, I liked the point, or I learned the point, that it was much deeper and more exhaustive than journalism. I liked the stop, drop, and roll analogy. Stopping to help the interviewee remember what they need to remember. Drop in terms of weaving the questions into a conversation. I thought that was excellent advice, but I suspect it's one of those things that's much easier to say than to do. You do all this preparation, you come up with your questions, you really want to make sure you cover all of that ground, and then you have to somehow weave it into a conversation. I think that subtlety would be very difficult to do. And then roll, keep things rolling, both through your non-verbs as well as through the small verbal sub-language prompts, the ahas and those sort of things that kind of keep the ball rolling and keep people engaged in the conversation. And the whole point of secondary sources providing context for oral histories was something I hadn't thought of before. Just hadn't interacted with that. But it really seemed to tie back to that whole point of checking your sources, having internal criticism for veracity and completeness. And I thought that was very good advice, very interesting, and good to know. Third chapter, Urban's chapter, for biographies. I thought it was interesting that he kind of talked about how it was okay for research to be autobiographical. I think in some of the other areas that we've read about, both in this class and in the other class, we've learned that all research to a certain extent is autobiographical. It tells us a lot about the context of the person and the person who is conducting the research, and their worldview, their culture, their values, etc. So it was interesting. He framed that a little differently than anyone had in our previous readings, so I thought it was very interesting. And the whole idea that research comes from other research, which I thought the other chapter where they talked about, or the author talked about lumping and splitting, just said that in a more catchy way, but they were basically saying the same thing. And that was really a theme I thought that ran through all of the readings. Is this was really interesting because it was talking about, it was researchers writing about what they think about as they prepare to research, not necessarily talking about their research. And that step back from the intellectual work to talk about the process was very helpful as we prepare to begin researching and writing, etc. In earnest, because you really got a chance to see some all-stars and how they're playing and how they're thinking, and I always think that's a good thing. In the Humphrey chapter, I just realized that I would have made a ton of rookie mistakes in my first visit to an archive without having read that. I'll probably still make rookie mistakes, but this was just really helpful in terms of doing your research beforehand, not bringing pens, just a lot of really good basic information about how to navigate in an archive that I would have missed altogether, and probably wasted one good trip anyway to the first archive that I had to visit. The fifth chapter on literature review, I like that scholarship grows through debate, change, and disagreement. That is something that I've talked about with my leadership staff, disagreeing without being disagreeable, and that really seems to be the case with the science as well, in our field. We need to challenge each other's thoughts and try to try to help each other grow, but that means we're going to have to disagree on things, and we just have to do that in a way that maintains the relationship. And then this was the section on splitters and lumpers, which I just thought was great, and I tried to think about, well, am I a splitter or am I a lumper, or am I a little bit of both? So that's probably an area where I still want to, what I want to know is, what's my style going to be? Am I going to be a lumper? Am I going to be a splitter? Am I going to be a little bit of both? But it really is great advice. It just really resonated with me. And then the seventh chapter on photos, I never considered the context of a photo that accompanied text until reading this article. I just sort of assumed, well, that's a kind of as she alludes in her article. It's just kind of an interesting picture. I never thought of it as an item to be researched, and I like the fact that she said photographs are simultaneously fiction and nonfiction. We read more into them than we really ought to, unless we've done the good scholarly work to read into them in the way that we should, and that using that whole artist, patron, and audience approach seems to be a wise one. So that's it from Colorado. Hope you all are having a great time, and looking forward to seeing you on the asynchronous conversation. Thanks.